Welcome to the Thrive podcast with the Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church.
How does your faith kind of play into it, or does it play into it?
What can be done about it? When I say the church, I'm talking about evangelical white Christians and the black folk who attend their churches.
Hello, welcome to the Thrive podcast with the Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church. I'm Fred Jeff Smith, pastor of Shiloh, and I'm very happy that you chose to either view us on Facebook or YouTube or Vimeo, or that you are listening to us on iTunes, Spotify, or Amazon Prime. As always, we invite and encourage your comments to us about how we can make the podcast better for you. You can reach me at fredjeffsmith@gmail.com, fredjeffsmith@gmail.com, and we appreciate all of the comments that we receive. I'm very honored to once again, I believe this is your fourth time being with us, Mayor. I'm very honored to have the Mayor-President of East Baton Rouge Parish, Sharon Weston-Broome, as our guest today. Madam Mayor, I know it's very busy for you, but thank you for taking the time to come and share with us.
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting me. I love to have an opportunity to share.
So let's start with this. I'm very irritated about the outcome of the November 5th election. I've made no secret of the fact that I'm very disappointed, not only in how the vote turned out, but that so many black people nationally and locally seem to be dismissive about the vote, and there seems to be an attitude that I sense that people are lackadaisical about voting. Am I incorrect in that? What's your assessment of that?
I sense a level of that as well. And, my constant thought and constant communication is that there's too much at stake to be indifferent about the electoral process. I get sometimes people being dismayed and disheartened, but for me, that's even more motivation to go out to the polls and vote, to share your views with your vote.
Statewide, it was almost a foregone conclusion that President Trump would win the state, but I would imagine that it was heartening to you to see that East Baton Rouge Parish voted strongly in favor of Vice President Harris. How do you think going forward that bodes for you in the upcoming runoff? Or does it matter at all?
Yeah, it does matter. I'm extremely optimistic, and I believe that Baton Rouge, time and time again, has shown that we are as a city a more blue-leaning city. And if you look back historically, we have not had a Republican mayor for over 20 years now.
Yes.
And I believe that the demographics of Baton Rouge shows both from a party point of view as well as a racial point of view that we are more leaning towards areas that certainly empower people, that we're concerned about social justice, that we're concerned about issues that impact people like poverty, that we're concerned about everyone thriving and prospering and not just a few.
You and Mr. Edwards are in the runoff. There were several other candidates that were in the race. I'm not talking about Mr. James, but there were several other candidates in the race. I'm not a politician, so I don't know how this works. Do you take the opportunity, now that you're in the runoff, do you take the opportunity to speak with some of the other candidates and try to get their point of view? Some candidates run on one issue or another. Is it common practice for you to sit down and talk with these candidates and try to gauge what their interest is and what their point of view is?
Absolutely. I have already reached out to several of the candidates who ran for mayor, just to talk with them about their concerns and their issues. I reached out early on to one candidate who I still owe a Sunday afternoon lunch to after church, and
Okay.
that would be bad business.
Okay. He's actually a member here.
I know.
Yes.
He
Yes.
told me he's a member here. He's
Yes.
active in Sunday school.
Absolutely.
And so I committed to him, and I'm going to fulfill that commitment that we would get together one Sunday after church and sit down and talk. And I've reached out to a couple of other candidates as well, and we are going to be talking as well. So,
Do you get the sense that these people are genuinely engaged? And I'm not speaking about necessarily these particular candidates, but in general, because you've done this several times over several years, and you've never lost a campaign. She's never lost a campaign. Do you get the sense that these people are genuinely concerned, or is it the case that some people are prompted to run by other interests?
I believe some candidates are on a mission, and that they have issues that particularly are important to them, and they use this as an opportunity, as a platform to share those issues. I would say that most of them are not hungry for power and authority. I would say that their motives vary at the end of the day when you talk with them. But I sense that many wanted to get their views out in a very, very public way, and that is why they chose to run for office.
One of the things that came out of the November 5th election that I was gratified to see was the overwhelming defeat of the home rule charter bundle that was put in place. I was vehemently opposed to the idea of a city manager over which the Metro Council had veto power. I think I know that you're happy about that
I am
too.
happy about that.
Do you think that it's going to come back up again? Because this could be one of those issues that doesn't know how to die. Because this is the second time that it's come up.
Correct. What I think is going to happen is that there's going to be eventually another effort to look at the plan of government holistically versus taking a portion of it and trying to just address that. So to answer your question, it may come back up, but I believe that there will be more focus not on a city manager, but more focus on some of the other issues in the plan of government that need to be revisited in many ways. For example, that executive council position is important. And there are some other issues that I believe there could be some unified collaboration and agreement on. But what takes place and what took place is that you had a very first of all, you had an issue that most people, as you could tell with the vote, were not in favor of.
Right.
But in addition to that, people were looking at the language in that amendment, and it was the most convoluted language for an amendment that you could ever see. And so people want to know what they're voting for. And I believe that there were some original conversations around the plan of government seeking public input, and I wouldn't be surprised if that reemerges.
There have been times in the past where people have floated the idea of council members at large, which is something else that I'm opposed to because, as far as I'm concerned, that just heightens the influence of the council and diminishes the influence of the mayor-president. Do you sense with this new council coming in, and many of them are incumbents who won re-election, do you sense that there's any kind of a thrust toward council members at large coming down the road?
I don't see the council members at large issue getting any traction. As you know, right now, you're well aware that there are council members who have filed a lawsuit because of the thought that and belief, and I support them wholeheartedly, that there should be another minority seat
Yes.
on the council.
Yes.
And
Gerrymandering should be undone.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that lawsuit is going forward, and I believe that we will see eventually, hopefully, a more council that is representative of the, once again, the demographics of this city and this community.
Governor Landry is currently has currently called the state legislature into session around the issues of tax reform. Without getting into the specifics of what it is that he's asking for, it seems to me that he wants to lower the taxes on industry and the wealthy, and he wants to somehow balance the gaping hole in the state budget with regressive sales taxes. And there seems to be some attention that he wants to give to the two largest cities in the state, Baton Rouge and New Orleans. Governor Landry is a Republican. The legislature is overwhelmingly Republican. You are a Democrat, but you are known for being able to reach across the aisle and work with others. What's your assessment of how Baton Rouge is going to come out of this tax reform issue, and do you see good times or dangerous times coming down the road?
Right now, I believe that there's a strong element of unpredictability in what's going on in the session right now. I will tell you that my office has been engaged. In fact, one of my staff persons with the finance department is in the middle communicating on a regular basis because of her expertise and knowledge with those who are crafting the legislation. There are so many unknowns right now. For example, when we first started having conversations and learning more about some of the issues at hand down at the Capitol with the tax session, there are certain businesses that are being considered or were being considered because things are constantly evolving and shifting down there. I'm just going to say, like, hypothetically, because I don't want my barber industry to
Sure.
get concerned hypothetically. But let's just say some service industries.
Yes.
Putting taxes
Yes.
on some of the service industries. How do you tax that? How do you assess what a haircut is worth and how much you should tax that person, right?
I agree.
And that's one of the areas that seems to be very complicated in terms of how are you going to assess these services that are provided for people and say it's worth a certain amount of tax. So we're intimately involved with the Parish Presidents Association and the police jury, and they are one of our, besides having our own lobbyists, and we've been in communication with our legislative delegation on this session. But even what I hear from the legislators, to date, seems to be that the verdict is still out on where we're going with some of these issues. Like, for example, I think yesterday somebody told me that they were considering a flat tax.
3.5%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's something that's new that wasn't originally discussed in the process. How's that going to impact? One of the things I know for sure as Mayor-President is that we are keeping a very close watch on what is taking place there because, of course, we rely on different types of taxes for our budget. And on the other hand, too, we don't want to have a mandate that causes us grief in the process of trying to manage our finances here in the city and parish. As you well know, and I may be jumping ahead on this, but we're already working very diligently to manage our finances in the light of a new city of over 85,000 people.
86,000.
Yeah. So
Yes, ma'am.
that's one of our top priorities right now. So Listen, I am counting dollars and cents. I'm watching everything that's dealing with money that could possibly impact us.
Well, since you brought up St. George,
I knew that would be a segue, probably.
yeah. What's the progress in getting a fixed plan from the incorporators and now the new city government of St. George? The last time I checked, there still has not been a cohesive, workable plan that has been presented. Is there any news that you can share with us on that?
Well, I will share that the City of St. George and the City Parish of Baton Rouge have agreed on a mediator.
Okay.
And that took time.
I'm sure.
Because both entities were bringing names to the table, but we have agreed on that. So I am hopeful that this mediator can help us get closer to a resolution. It was somebody that they agreed on and that we agreed on.
Okay.
So,
and the name will be forthcoming at some point in the future?
Yes.
Okay.
But, and so I believe that will get us closer because I want to bring closure on this issue, but I'm not going to bring closure by sacrificing
Absolutely.
our resources of city parish government.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to do that. I was elected to protect our finances, to make sure that we have efficient delivery of services. And listen, as you may know, Pastor, I just did my 2025 budget. I just presented that budget. And that budget certainly does not include any layoffs. And we've got over 4,000 employees
Yes, ma'am.
in city parish government. That was very important to me.
Yes.
I did not want to do a budget based on the possibilities of St. George, which we did make some adjustments because that is still out there.
Yes.
And we're working on our 25 budget. Now, we can always come back later on and make additional adjustments through amendments, et cetera. But as we went through that budget, almost $1 billion, I made it very clear to my staff that whatever we do, I want to maintain our employees, retain our employees, nobody laid off. And for those people who qualify, we're still giving them their 3% annual merit raise. And we still have a budget that will allow us to have a consistent effective delivery of services to the citizens. And so those were three of my top goals.
When this arbitrator is put into place, what is the extent of the negotiation? Is it just around current services, or will that include schools and
it won't include
facilities and things
schools.
of that
It will
sort?
not include schools. What
Okay.
it is, what the focus is going to be, which is one of our sticking points, is certainly, well, let me give you a couple. One is, what do you want to take care of or be responsible for, and what do you want us to be responsible for? Now, to some extent, they've already shared that, like they want to do their own planning and zoning. So we know that, and there are a couple of other issues that they've said they want to take on.
Okay.
But the other issue that is really concerning is the incorporation date.
Right.
And it is my hope that the mediator will help us come to a reasonable incorporation date.
Okay. Okay. Most recently, your Safe BR friends came out with a report where they said, and they were careful with their language, they did not say that they were endorsing a merger of law enforcement, but that they were reporting that there are potential benefits from the merging of the Sheriff's Office and the Baton Rouge Police Department. I think I know where you stand on this. I have read the Sheriff's position on it. I have read the current police chief's position on it, and I think all of you share the same position that it should not happen. So my question is, if the mayor-president, if the sheriff, and if the police chief don't seem to want this, then what is the motivation behind Safe BR putting out such a report and making a recommendation that they're not calling a recommendation? But that's what it is.
Okay. So two things come to mind in terms of the motivation. One is that there is a belief that this proposed, or potential, I should say, potential consolidation would make Baton Rouge a safer community. That's one area. The second one is that they believe it would help develop efficiency of services. So let me talk about both of those.
Okay.
We know that, and there are some cities that do have a merger, right? But we know that addressing crime is far deeper than just one component of law enforcement.
Absolutely.
We know that. As it relates to efficiencies, we have already started developing efficiencies in the police department. Let me give you an example. We once had an air helicopter system department, et cetera, and now we have merged that with the sheriff's department. We turned that over. That's an efficiency.
Yes.
And so we had an efficiency study actually done for the BRPD several years ago, probably about 3 years ago now. And so those recommended efficiencies by that consultant, we've already started working on. But the biggest point, Pastor, is that addressing crime, as I said, is we can't police our way out of it. And there's a thought that, and I'm all for having more police officers. I don't have a problem with building our police force up. But you have to understand that takes a level of recruitment. It takes a level of interest. It takes a lot of things to build our police force up. And what we have found is that, as you well know, police work is not for the faint of heart.
Right.
And nowadays, people are not like running to the office to say, I want to be a police officer.
Yes.
Now, we're going to have 2 cadet classes in this coming year. We've provided for them in the budget. There'll be about 17 people each. But I say that to say I believe we're doing our part in the Baton Rouge Police Department to, as they're charged with, protect and serve. Is there room for improvement? Always room for improvement. Always room for improvement. But on the other hand, we recognize that you have to have address crime with services, programs for youth, outreach, resources, jobs.
Yes.
All of that plays a significant role. I shared with somebody recently that we have, I believe it's an 18.5% poverty rate here in Baton Rouge. The national average is 12 point something. So we cannot ignore poverty.
And the poverty rate is artificially low. Because even at 18%, it's artificially low. Because what they're calling the impoverished is a ridiculously small amount of money. And everybody talks about, well, we need to raise the minimum wage. Raise it to $15 an hour. And tell me who's going to be able to take care of a family on $30,000 a year. Very few people are going to be able to do that. If we had a serious, transparent conversation on poverty, then we would be able to understand the relationship between poverty and crime. Not everybody who is engaged in criminal activity just wants to be a criminal.
Right.
They don't see any other way of providing for themselves and for their families. And it is American systems that have forced them into the decision that they are making. Am I crying for the victim? Perhaps a little bit I am. I just understand that there is a reason why. It is not true for everybody. I have friends of mine, Reverend Tommy Gibson is always telling me there's some folk who ought to be in jail. And I agree with that. But there are some people who get caught up in a system because they don't have any other way of providing for themselves. And it's troubling to me. It's also troubling to me that Safe BR tends to want to be a lone wolf and go out and do its own thing when you had a program in place that's still in place.
Yes.
Safe, healthy, hopeful communities. And they tend to want to just circumvent that and go their own way. So that for me is also problematic.
Our Safe, Hopeful, Healthy initiative has really made an impact in the communities that they serve. We have community interventionists that are part of that program. These are individuals who can help take some proactive steps to keep things from jumping off, as they say, in a neighborhood, because they're credible messengers that people trust. And then they also respond if there is a tragedy in the community and people know them. And so that has been a big part of our Safe, Hopeful, Healthy, but also we've provided summer jobs for our youth through that. We've also provided resources through our Summer of Hope for communities that we go in. And we have seen that when we go into a community for our 8 weeks during our Summer of Hope, the data is showing us that the incidents of crime go down. And so we're waiting right now for data. We're collecting and analyzing the data from this year, 2024, our Summer of Hope program, to see the impact. And so we, and we're talking about crime here, but let me just say this too, Pastor. I believe that we cannot operate in a spirit of fear in our city and in our you've heard law enforcement say this time and time again. Now that doesn't mean that as the mayor I don't continue to work on mitigating crime and making this a safe community for everyone. But I believe that fear fuels a lot of the mentality about crime in our community, and sometimes can, make it more voluminous. The average person, if we're in a group together, if we connect, you're part of my sphere, then the chances of us having or being impacted by crime are few and far between. But if you are in an environment where, the folks that you're hanging out with are consistently involved, or, that's part of that lifestyle, then the incidents often elevate. Now, we have to look at, and I like to bring data, and I don't have the data on this, but I know from conversations that we've seen a lot of domestic violence that has taken place in our community. These are people who know each other. And so we have to look at the root causes and address those, and we have to look at the data that shows us, gives us a clear snapshot of what has taken place in our community and work towards that. And I believe that closing the gap between the law enforcement and the citizens is one of our top priorities and should be.
Let me ask you a couple of questions about things that we have talked about before, just to see if any change has taken place. Rail between Baton Rouge and New Orleans, has there been any progress on that at all?
There hasn't been a lot of progress. As you know, I don't think it's a priority for the new governor. I think I read that somewhere. I don't want to misquote. But there is some still level of momentum from those involved who would like to see that rail become a reality. I have supported it historically, but against the backdrop of issues that we face in our community, I don't think it ranks as high as some of the other needs that we have.
The move that you and the council agreed to with regard to putting a hotel downtown at the Raising Cane Center, has any progress been made on that other than the fact that you all have agreed to move forward with it?
They've been having monthly committee meetings. There was a committee assigned made up of a diverse group of people. I believe I have one appointment. I do have one appointment on the committee. And so it's been a lot of, it's definitely in its infancy stage, genesis stage, and there's been a lot of, I don't want to exaggerate, there have been several meetings that have taken place to kind of hammer out what things would look, what this will look like, what is the process. But I assure you, at the end of the day, there will be ample opportunity for community input because it's a significant project that's taking place in our community. But right now, they're just having the committee meetings surrounding it.
One of the things that Governor Landry wants to eliminate in his tax reform bid is to get rid of historic tax credits for the renovation of older buildings. How does that impact, or do you think it will impact development here in Baton Rouge?
I do think it will impact development. I mean, we have a project, and I say we as a community have a project right now that I believe, and I'll double check my information on this, that they have been a benefactor in many different, they've gotten different funding streams, but I believe they've been a benefactor of that. And that has been the old Lincoln Theater. I believe they have been a benefactor of that. And so we have a lot of historic properties in our city and in our parish. And I would like to see that continue because we don't want to see historic properties become blighted properties.
Right.
If there's a great potential for them to be restored and put back into commerce.
In addition to the Lincoln Theater, there seems to have been a stall on the renovation of the old Lincoln Hotel, which is right here in close proximity to our church on the corner of Government and Eddie Robinson. I'm just curious as to how the governor thinks that improvement in business can be enhanced by taking away these tax credits, which people have made such use of in order to renovate and improve buildings and facilities in our community.
Well, I don't know what his thought process is on that, but I will say that the city parish has been a very strong partner in our resources in helping get the Lincoln Hotel back into commerce as well as the Lincoln Theater. So we put a great deal of money into both of those projects.
I understand that there was a turnover. I believe the last time you were here, we talked about it with regard to the leadership of St. Vincent de Paul and the move that you had towards opening up, enhancing homeless shelters. Can you give us any report on that?
I can. I will tell you first that I haven't had many conversations with the new leadership or interim leadership of St. Vincent de Paul, but I have had conversations with the State Office of Community Development, which was really leading this effort for a new homeless shelter. After hearing from the citizens of the community and hearing from our office, they are looking for another location.
Okay.
So that is, I believe, welcome news for the citizens who expressed very demonstratively in a meeting that they were not for that. I believe our motives and our goals towards addressing homelessness are pure, but we cannot neglect the voice of the community in this process. And when I heard that, I told my staff, we've got to go back to the drawing board. And going back to the drawing board started first with the state, who was really providing a lot of the money for that. So we had that meeting, and they are in agreement that they're going to look for another location inside that's more compatible.
Okay. As long as it's not in my backyard. That's the way everybody responds to it. Let me ask you a somewhat selfish question, because Shiloh has an early learning center here. And there is concern that with the new national administration and with the cost-cutting attitude of the current state administration, that services to daycares and early learning centers is going to take a hit, particularly with regard to supplementing tuitions and food services. Can you share with me any thoughts on what's going to happen because you have been very generous with the way that you have supported early learning, early child care, and I would certainly like to see, selfishly, I'd like to see that continue.
I can tell you that from a city point of view, that our commitment remains to early childhood education and helping support those entities that are helping us respond to early childhood. We were extremely fortunate over the past years that we've had the ARPA funds to help in some one-time funding with situations. But I believe that our Office of Human Services, led by Bernadine Mabry, is certainly focused on early childhood development as a priority. And hopefully we're getting ready to embark on, as it relates to our Head Start program. And I know this is not directly connected, but somewhat what we call Head Start Restart program. So if we see more of that taking place with partnerships, I believe we can open up more opportunities for early childhood development. So that's a long way of saying the commitment is still there. It's just a matter of how we can provide the resources. We're looking at those items very closely because, as you heard me say earlier, we did have to tighten the purse strings on our budget as a result of St. George, but we still have that same level of commitment. And of course, I'm the ultimate optimist, and I believe that we can, though, that now more than ever, those partnerships are needed.
Yes, ma'am.
And so we're going to look at a path that could take us to continue those partnerships.
Let's talk about North Baton Rouge for a second. You are a resident of North Baton Rouge.
I am.
And I was raised in North Baton Rouge. And one of the things that I have been concerned about is how we have redefined what North Baton Rouge is. People think that anything that happens on the north side of Florida Boulevard constitutes a North Baton Rouge improvement, and I don't share that opinion. I think North Baton Rouge deserves the fullest attention from the mayor's office that it can possibly get. So from your perspective, what's on your agenda for a third term to help North Baton Rouge?
Before I answer that question, Pastor, can I ask you, what does your map look like for North Baton Rouge?
Starting with Dixie, Old Dixie, what they now call Astruma, Glen Oaks, Banks, Southern Heights, Golden Meadow, Crestworth. That's North Baton Rouge. The areas surrounding the airport, Zion City, Mickens Road, that's North Baton Rouge. Florida at Ardenwood is not North Baton Rouge.
Okay, I got you.
Airline at Florida is not. I'm happy about the Amazon Center too. That ain't North Baton Rouge, from my perspective.
Okay, I want to leave that in North Baton Rouge. I want to count that. I want to count that as a North Baton Rouge. But I totally get what you're saying. Listen, Osceola Street. That's where my parents lived for years. That's Dixie. So I get that. Well, let me tell you what I know. You know this, but there are many projects that are in the works that are going to go on into the next 4 years, and then I'll tell you the vision for the next 4 years that's part of that. So, the Plank Road Corridor project, that's going to be transformative. That's North Baton Rouge.
Yes.
That's North
I'll give you North Baton Rouge for that.
Yeah, that's North Baton Rouge. So we're talking about our bus rapid transit that's starting on Airline, which is very close to North Baton Rouge, that area right there past Hollywood.
Okay.
That's it. So that's where the bus rapid transit is going to be. It's going to come down Plank Road and go all the way to Nicholson.
Okay.
So that's this project, the Plank Road Corridor project, is going to be transformative. Now, just like you have seen with the advent of Amazon impacting that Florida corridor, the same thing is going to happen with Plank Road. Once it's fixed up, once the bus rapid transit is there, I believe we're going to see more business development and growth, which means more jobs and opportunities for individuals. I can't tell you what those entities will be specifically, but I do believe that it will be transformative. Scotlandville, we supported a major project that's still underway, $6 million there in that Scotlandville corridor. I want to see North Baton Rouge, those areas that you named, but let's talk specifically about Scotlandville, because I know everybody thinks it believes or is in agreement that Scotlandville is North Baton Rouge.
Absolutely.
So I believe that Scotlandville is one of our greatest opportunities for development. So right now I'm working on, with the council person in that area, bringing a grocery store to that area. Now, we not only need a grocery store in that area, we need them all over. But we're really focused and leaning in on bringing a grocery store to that area. I just put a RFP out. We've had many conversations, and I believe that there will be a grocery store in that area sooner than later because of the intentionality. I will also tell you that affordable housing, I just approved yesterday, I don't know how many projects of affordable housing in the North Baton Rouge area. For example, on Mohegan Street.
Yes.
So they're, and when we have affordable housing, I believe that the rooftops help attract businesses to a community. And so those are just some of the initial thoughts. I really want to see more of collaboration take place between Southern University and the city of Baton Rouge.
Yes.
So we can lean in and focus on those particular areas that they can help us with in the development of, that we can partner with in the development of North Baton Rouge.
Does the airport play any role in developing infrastructure around North Baton Rouge?
Other than the, from a transportation point of view, runways, et cetera. Now, I will tell you, we did have a business development center that I put money in for the airport when I was in the Senate. And that was supposed to, I don't know what the status of it is now since I've been mayor, but that was supposed to serve as a opportunity incubator, an opportunity for businesses to, entrepreneurs and other small businesses to grow and thrive. But I do believe one of the biggest benefits beside air travel that the airport brings is the amount of jobs for DBEs. I just went to one of their seminars recently, and they have been on the forefront of DBE participation long before.
Help me understand, what is a DBE?
Disadvantaged Business Enterprise.
Okay.
So they are dealing with minority, women, veterans, small businesses, and they've been doing this for a longer period of time because of the federal connection that they have. And federal transportation, they automatically have DBE participation involved in it.
Can I push back on something with you about the whole idea of women owned businesses? I'm not opposed to women at all, but in many cases, what I have seen is white men putting their wives and their girlfriends and their mistresses as heads of businesses so that they can qualify as a minority business, but the money is actually coming from someplace else. And I'm on the outside looking in, so I claim that there might be a certain degree of ignorance on my part, but it just doesn't seem fair to me that they can just take a female who's blonde and big-chested and put her in a room and say that this is a minority business when really the money and all of the planning and everything else is coming from someplace else. Is there anything, you're the mayor, I recognize that this might be beyond your purview, but somebody ought to do something to look into that. There ought to be some kind of investigation into that. There are legitimate minority-owned businesses out there that are suffering because of this kind of abuse that takes place on the other side. Now tell me where I'm wrong.
Well, first of all, let's look at the data. We're going to have to go back. I don't have that in front of me to see. You know, I'm not minimizing what you're saying because I have heard it before, and I do believe that it does exist. But I believe my responsibility is to make sure I get those people, the minorities at the table, people of color at the table, to be a part of the process. And there should be some checks and balances in place to assure that those people who are signing up because they fit into one of those categories, indeed, that they do fall into that category, and it's not them being the front face, if you will, while others are in the background. So I agree with you on that. There should be some checks and balances. While the checks and balance part may or may not be in place, my responsibility is to get as many folks on that procurement list as possible so they can participate in the process.
Is there any improvement being made to minority contracts and what's required with regard to licensing and bonding? Many black construction companies that can do the work simply don't have access to the resources to provide adequate bonding. Has any progress been made to make some of these? Because I hear people all the time say, minority contracts, this isn't going to black people, blah, blah, blah. But according to the regulations that you have to abide by, many of these businesses don't qualify with regard to bonding requirements. Has any accommodation been made toward that?
So we have, and we are lifting that up in a more intentional way, but we have training sessions and seminars that we offer to help people close the gap on that, because sometimes we do hear from people that the process gets to be a little voluminous, complicated, et cetera. So I believe it's our responsibility, if we're trying to increase the pipeline of minority participation, that we give them the training and development that they need to be a part of the process. And so we have done that at some level, but obviously there's always room for improvement.
Last thing I want to ask you with regard to North Baton Rouge. It seems to me that there are three entities up there, three rather large entities that can work with city government if they have a mind to. You mentioned one, Southern. I asked you about the other, the airport. The third one is ExxonMobil. ExxonMobil takes up all of Scenic Highway and runs all the way into North Baton Rouge. Is ExxonMobil a good neighbor for economic development in North Baton Rouge?
I believe they are a good neighbor for economic development. I believe they've grown into becoming a good neighbor for economic development over the years. And why do I say that? Well, I have participated in a couple of their industrial training graduations. And so they are now working in partnership with Baton Rouge Community College and providing training for many hundreds of individuals who can leave out there and go and get jobs at an ExxonMobil or a similar company. I believe that they are growing as a good neighbor in the fact that they have created an office space for minority businesses in one of their in part of their campus that was not being used. So I believe they are stepping, and I believe it's been an evolvement. You know, over the many years that I've been in public office, I've seen that elevation that they're trying to grow with the times, right? Since they're going to be a part of this community, have been and will be, they're understanding more the value of diversity and being in partnership with the communities that you are involved in. So I'm seeing more of that take place. Certainly for a company of their size, they can do a lot. You know, they can do a lot to help
I agree.
the community in which they're located, and I believe they're taking some very intentional steps to do that.
Look at this camera. That's your camera, and tell people why they should vote for Sharon Weston-Broome for Mayor-President of East Baton Rouge.
As you know, I am in a runoff for re-election to become your mayor-president for a third time. I'm asking for your support and for your vote. There's a clear distinction between my opponent and your mayor. Let's start with the fact that my opponent has not voted for 8 years. That's 25 elections. If the shoe were on the other foot, if that had been Sharon Weston-Broome, there would be no consideration for me as mayor-president. Well, first of all, your mayor wouldn't do that because she's an active voter and she shows up. And that's the other thing that's very important. You want a leader, you want a mayor who's going to show up for you. I've been there throughout the years. I've showed up. My opponent has not shown up. Not only has he not shown up to the polling place to vote, he's not shown up for this community overall. More importantly, we have successes and achievements that we've accomplished together as a community. I want to continue to build on those successes and achievements. I want to see our vision for the future manifest. The riverfront development from Southern University, the bluffs of Southern University, to downtown, to Nicholson Drive. I want to see and be there when these 16,000 new jobs that are predicted to be part of our community over the next 2 years, 8,000 each year. I want to be a part of connecting our graduates from Southern University and LSU to those jobs. I believe that our best days in Baton Rouge are ahead of us. Yes, we have some challenges, but you want a mayor who has experience, who understands government, who served in government, and who shows up for you. I humbly ask for your vote for re-election as your mayor-president. Thank you very much.
I always appreciate the fact that you make yourself available to us. Thank you for coming and sharing with us today. Thank you for viewing. Thank you for listening. We'll be back again next time.